Hey y'all, thanks for tuning in to season 3, episode 17 of the Peace Podcast. Just let me reclaim my emotional energy, whatever that looks like. And you know how when you are dealing with your children and they are emotionally spent and they throw temper tantrums and they're not able to regulate their emotions no matter how much you've taught them how, and they just can't do it anymore. It happens a lot to me when my son switches from household to household because he's used to being able to act in the world and be a certain way when he's with me, and when he's with his dad it's a little bit different because the expectations are different. So when he comes back to me, he has this emotionally dysregulated state that he's in, and I have to teach him how to get back into his emotionally regulated space of being because he forgets that he can be that way again. But when he first returns, he's sometimes angry, he's sometimes frustrated, he's sometimes emotional, and he cries. And that happens to us too. So we go through spaces and stages in our life where we are dealing with so much of everything else emotionally. We're dealing with other people's emotions, people we're in relationship with. We're dealing with our children's emotions. We're dealing with parents' emotions. We're dealing with things that emotionally affect us. And when we're doing that, it is a constant emotional labor. Like it is constantly draining you, even if you aren't 100% focused on it all the time. There's like tabs running in the background that are taking up your battery just like a computer. And you have to be able to close those tabs and identify how your emotional energy is being spent in spaces that maybe you don't necessarily need for it to be spent or even want for it to be spent. And if you're a highly feeling person like myself and you tend to feel deep emotion when it comes to your relationships and when it comes to the people that you experience on a day-to-day basis, when it comes to just what's going on in the state of the world, you have a very strong emotional reaction to those things. This isn't to say that you have to get rid of that emotional reaction, but it's to understand how constantly being in that state of dysregulated emotions will wear you down. It kind of looks like when you sometimes feel like you can go, 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 and then all of a sudden you hit a wall and you feel like you might need to lay in bed for days, but you're exhausted, but you're not exhausted in the physical sense. Like maybe you need some rest, but the rest that you need is detaching and being able to not have to emotionally consider all of the things that you've been considering. So we first need to understand that that constant emotional labor will wear you down. It will. There's no way around it. You can't be a highly feeling person and not experience some sort of fatigue from constantly dealing with emotional experiences. And yes, we're all going to have those emotional experiences, but we need to be able to deal with ourselves when we're emotionally exhausted. It's kind of like when we notice that our kids just need a mental health day, or when we notice that we just need a mental health day. It's like we'll extend the offer at times for our kids to just be like, okay, they need an hour to like decompress, or they need an hour to not have to do a ton of things and obligations that I'm giving them, but we won't do that for ourselves. But if you don't allow for yourself to have breaks from the emotional labor that you're experiencing, you will be drained. You will have no more battery to deal with the things that actually need you because you're constantly dealing with all of these windows that are and tabs that are running in the back of your brain. And the way to identify if you're dealing with emotional exhaustion is to look at your patterns and your behaviors and the way that you feel. One of the things that you will tend to notice about yourself is that you distract often. So, if you're emotionally drained from real life experiences, sometimes it feels easier to binge watch the show on Netflix or to scroll your social media or to distract yourself with a good book because you can escape from the reality of the emotions that you feel. And that's not dealing with those emotions, one. And two, if you find yourself consistently going to those apps on your phone, then you're probably somebody who is distracting yourself. Sorry about that. Who is distracting yourself from the world and the things that are going on in your world because you need a break. But instead of doing things that are healthy ways to position yourself to take that break, you distract and you become on this wheel of information. And what happens is you think that that's helping you, but in reality, when you're distracting yourself with the apps or with shows or movies, you're actually more highly emotional when you're watching the reels or when you're experiencing whatever you're binge watching because you have so much emotion inside of you from the things that are going on around you that you can't even successfully distract from it. So those things cause more of an emotional reaction. Another way to identify if you are emotionally exhausted is if you break down easily. So the smallest shift in plans will put you in a tizzy. Sometimes you'll cry or you'll rage out, or the smallest thing that triggers you, you're unable to regulate your emotions. And it's because you're so exhausted emotionally that you're not able to regulate when unexpected circumstances are happening to you. And so it might look like, something small happens and you break down. Like, I can tell you that most recently, like, we're on spring break right now, and I love to share with you the stories about how these things happen to me, even currently in my healing journey, because I don't want you to think that because you know and you have educated yourself about these things that they just go away. They don't. You just become more self-aware of them. And so we're on spring break, and I want to make sure that my kids experience, fun during spring break, but we also don't go on trips during spring break because I know that they, as well as myself, need a break, not the tizzy and just the craziness of going on a vacation. And so we do fun things. We go outside and we read and we dig up the yard and we go find rocks in the forest and we do all of these type of things. But there was a morning where my son was being very touchy-feely, and I just was so overstimulated that I could not handle a touchy-feely morning. And I didn't snap at him, but I said something to the effect of, "Oh my gosh, will you please stop touching me?" And then I felt horrible because the snap wasn't at him. It just kind of was out loud. But he felt the aftermath of that. And so I apologized and said, it's not you. It's just that I am in a space where I need to not be touched right now. And I need you to respect that in the moment. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to hug you later. I just need something right now. And that something is for you to not be all over me. You can still touch me, we can still hug, but it can't be like all up in my face. Like, I need a little bit, give me my bubble and my personal space. And so I went to the bathroom after it happened and I was like bawling like a baby. And that's when I was able to self-reflect and be like, okay, you are doing too much and you are accessing too many emotions right now because you're home with your kids for this week and you love your kids and you want to spend time with your kids, but you're also not taking time to take a breath for yourself, and you need that. So if you break down easily or if you rage out very easily and you're like crashing out on people every time something happens, then you probably are someone who is very emotionally exhausted, and you need to deal with that emotional exhaustion so that you don't bleed onto other people. And the last one is, which I just alluded to, is that you're often overstimulated. So there's a physical overstimulation where it's like you can't, like, you're constantly feeling like you need to break free, like there's too much, you feel caged in, there's too much around you, there's too much in your face. And then there's also a mental overstimulation where it's like things that wouldn't normally stress you out are so stressful and stressing you out right now. And that's a sign of overstimulation. And it's also the result or the aftermath of being emotionally exhausted. So, one of the things that we can do, or some of the things that we can do, when we're emotionally exhausted and when we're understanding and self-reflecting and being aware of our emotional exhaustion is to protect our energy. Because your energy does not have to flow freely to external sources, especially when you are surrounded by energy vampires. Because people who cannot create their own positive energy will drain it from the sources that are around them. And if you happen to be somebody who is a positive energy source externally, then those people will bleed you dry if you allow them to. So you have to protect your energy. And I know there's a ton of stuff floating around on social media right now where it's saying, like, if you have to protect your peace, then you don't really have peace. If you have to protect your energy, then you don't really have energy. I disagree with that. I see it from a different perspective because you have to protect your home and you have a home, and you have to protect your kids and you have those kids. So if you have to protect something, it just means that you value it. And so you need to make sure that some strategies are in place to protect it. One of the strategies that works the best for protecting your energy is learning how to say no. And I'm going to record a video in the future for ways to say no when no feels like something that is just far out of reach for you because you're not really good at saying no. But we have to learn how to say no. We have to learn to say, I appreciate you for offering, but I think I'm going to do this a different way. I love that for you, and that's a great opinion, but I don't really agree with that, so I'm going to do this a different way. Um, I have time, but I don't have the energy, so right now I don't want to say yes to you because I can't do it to my full capacity. All of these are examples of the ways to say no. But you have to give yourself permission to say no, especially when you realize the trade-off. If I say yes, then my energy is going to be depleted, and this is going to be the aftermath of that. If I say no, then I can be in a space where I can recharge my battery and I'll have the capacity to maybe do that thing later, but I'll definitely have the capacity to give the people around me the things that they need from me. And you can't do that if you're constantly giving yeses to everybody. And you might be able to give a variation of no. Like if you really want to do the thing, you don't have to say no, but you could say, I don't really have the capacity to do that today, but I may be able to do that for you tomorrow. Or I can't do that this morning, but I could probably do that this afternoon. Right now, I need to restore and re-energize. Those are all viable excuses for doing things. And you don't need an excuse, but sometimes it does feel like that. But in order to excuse yourself from being energetically drained, you have to be able to say no to people. And the other one is to be able to refocus. So when you are highly emotional and you're allowing yourself to get riled up about the things that are surrounding you and the people that are surrounding you, sometimes, and most of the time this works, it takes a second for you to pause, for you to be able to lessen that emotional energy that you're giving to the thing. So it looks like, I don't really know if that is that important to me right now. I feel passionately about it. I have a high emotional reaction to this thing, but is it really that important to me? Am I just allowing myself to emotionally overflow onto this thing that really doesn't need that much from me or require that much from me? The other thing, and I heard this from someone else, and I would love to be able to give the source's name, but I can't remember because it was so long ago. But if it won't matter in 5 years, then don't give it 5 minutes of your time is a great guideline to follow when you're somebody who is highly emotional. Because you can feel overstimulated and you can feel emotionally dysregulated and emotionally drained, and you can give your last to something that you just know is not really even worth it. It's like, that is not going to matter in 5 years. So why am I ruminating over it for 5 minutes? I'm not doing that. So I'm just going to say, well, that really kind of irritates me, or that really makes me angry, or whatever it is. But the long and the short of it is that I can't control it. So I'm not going to give it the little bit of emotional energy that I have left. especially when you're self-aware and you realize how much you're allowing external circumstances to deplete your emotional energy. You don't have to give your emotions to everything. Even if you're a highly feeling person, even if people are used to you being the one who gives them all of those emotions, you don't have to be. And so in order to protect it, you have to allow yourself to refocus on what's actually important to you and then give that thing what it requires from you. And I know that there's a ton of information floating around about self-care. Self-care is so, so, so valuable when we're talking about protecting our energy, when we're talking about reclaiming our emotional energy. But self-care does not look the same for everybody. And I think that's something that we really need to connect with, because when people say, well, self-care to me looks like going on a long road trip. Well, if you're a commuter to work, that long road trip might not be self-care to you. That might be something that you absolutely dread and you're like, yeah, nah, I'm not doing that. If someone says self-care to them, like it looks like going on a long run. I have a friend who always says, if you see me running, then know that something's chasing me because I don't run. That person would not find any type of joy in going for a run. So when we think about self-care, we have to assess what restores us emotionally. I can tell you the things that work for almost everybody. Praying works for almost everybody. Relaxing works for almost everybody. Now, I'll add a caveat to this one, because if you are somebody who has to be productive because you have perfectionist tendencies, this one will be hard for you. But relaxing will help you restore yourself emotionally. You just have to get over the hump of feeling guilty for not doing something. You have to resonate with yourself that relaxing is doing something. Relaxing is helping you to restore yourself emotionally. And once you get over that hump, relaxing will restore you emotionally. And another one is, instead of looking for what self-care looks like, because it's a whatever it looks like, just like this podcast, like it's a whatever it looks like. It is not a list that you check off. It's something that you have to develop within. It is the thing that you experience joy while doing. Hiking is something for me. There are some people who hate bugs and they're like, girl, no. There are some people who are afraid of the animals in the woods and they're like, girl, no. And so those people are not going to go hiking with me for self-care. But I know that being in nature is something that restores me emotionally. I could literally sit outside. This happened over spring break. My son is reading a book series. He's in second grade. He loves the book series. And I'm still reading Think Like a Monk. I was doing the audio and reading, and I was like, okay, Jay Shetty, we got to get back into this because I really do love the book. I've read it once and I wanted to read it again just to get more in depth into the information. And so I was like, let's go outside and read a book. So we sat in the sunshine on a blanket and he read his book and I read my book. And that restored me emotionally. That was able to create a connection with him, but it was also able for me to create a connection with me. And even though I was consuming information while I was doing it, I was experiencing joy being out in the sunshine, in the nature, sitting there reading with my kid. So you have to know yourself enough to know what brings you joy. And joy doesn't mean that it has to always feel good. So some people do a hard workout because it brings them joy. I'm one of those people. It brings me joy. Going on long walks can bring you joy. We actually did this activity with one of the groups that I'm in, and it was a self-care bingo board. And if you go on Canva and you just type in self-care bingo, there are tons of bingo boards on there with really good ideas for activities that you might resonate with as self-care that brings you joy, that will restore you emotionally. Some of them won't. So I took that self-care bingo board, and the way it works is you just mark it off as you do the thing, not like a to-do list, but like I did this today, or I did this evening, or whatever it is, and you try to create bingo, but then you also try to fill up the whole board. And I looked at several to get some ideas. But at the end of the day, it just sparked something in my brain to be able to think about the things that bring me joy. Planting flowers and working in the garden brings me joy. Some people hate that. I know that being outside in nature is a big deal for me. So you have to think about, what are the big deal things for you? Is it going to the coffee shop and people watching? Carve out time to do that, because if you don't, you're going to be carving out time to be laying in your bed for several days trying to recharge your battery. So when we think about self-care, don't look at what the gurus say self-care is. It doesn't have to be a massage. Sometimes massages are not self-care for some people. It doesn't have to be a pedicure or a manicure. Sometimes those places can be super overstimulating for some people. But whatever that self-care looks like for you, carve it into your day. Even if it's a 15-minute meditation, because that looks like self-care, carve it into your day. And if you're telling yourself right now, I don't have time to do that, I promise you, you do. Because when I look at my day, I'm waking up at 5 a.m. I don't go to bed until around 9:30, 10 o'clock, but I'm carving in workouts, I'm carving in cooking dinner for my kids, I'm carving in those self-care activities, and I have to. So even if it's 5 minutes of something that brings you joy, do the thing so that you can reclaim your emotional energy. Because if you don't, the world will deplete it from you. You won't protect yourself from it being depleted, and you'll end up with a battery that is completely unchargeable because you're too far in the depths of being emotionally drained. So I hope that right now, as you're watching this video, you're not that far into it. But if you are, you can always climb back out of it. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to a trusted counsel that you're close to and have them help you and be an accountability partner for you protecting that emotional energy, to not labor it on things that wear you down and drain you, but to allow yourself to take a breath, take a rest with yourself, and really experience some joy that will bleed back into and feed back into your emotional bucket, because you need that. Thank you guys for tuning in. If this video resonated with you, please like and subscribe to this channel. Go to my socials, follow me there. Share this video with somebody that you know that this could be the catalyst for change for them, because we know that knowledge gained and kept to ourselves is selfish, but knowledge gained and shared with the world just might be what they need to break free from the bondage that they're currently experiencing. And we want them to experience a life of freedom and joy. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you again next time.